Hey listeners, it's Kara, your host. After 176 amazing episodes and hundreds of book recommendations, I wanted to make it a little bit easier for you to find your next great read. The Bookish Lights Roadmap is your guide to all 175 podcast episodes, sorted by genre so you can quickly find the stories that fit your reading mood. From picture books to adult novels and everything in between, it's the perfect way to explore past episodes and discover new favorites. You can find your copy of the Bookish Lights Roadmap at www.bookishlights.com/read/roadmap, or just click the link in the show notes. Hi, I'm Kara Infante, and this is Bookish Flights. In each episode, I chat with one bookish guest as we take some time to sample and savor the pairing recommendations from their bookish flight. We hope to give you suggestions to cultivate your TBR list and nurture your leisure time through books. In today's episode, I am chatting with Tessa Afshar. Tessa has award-winning novels that have been on Publishers Weekly and CBA bestsellers list and have been translated into 13 languages. Winner of the ECPA Bronze Milestone Award, the Christy, the INSPY, and the ECPA Christian Book Award for her Bible study, The Way Home, Tessa holds a Master of Divinity from Yale, where she served as co-chair of the Evangelical Fellowship for 1 year. Born in the Middle East to a nominally Muslim family, Tessa converted to Christianity in her 20s. She is a devoted wife, a mediocre gardener, and an enthusiastic cook of biblical recipes. We're here today to discuss her latest novel, The Royal Artisan. Welcome to the show, Tessa.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you today, Cara.
Yes, I am so honored to have you on the show. Listeners, we do a little back talk before we always hit record here. And I was telling Tessa, I'm like, I loved your books. And so I was so excited to see you had a new one coming out so we could get you on the show.
Thank you so much. I look forward to it.
Yes, well, this is a great bio about you, and I have so many questions about it, but I also feel like we are so much more than our bio. So can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
I think really to capture me, you have to think a little bit about my background. So I grew up in a different country. I moved through several continents, really, by the time I settled in the US. And this is my home, and I'm an American citizen. It's one of the blessings of my life. But having had that sort of a constant move in my teens, having basically lost my language and my family and my background, has taught me a lot about culture, about the importance of community. And so a lot of my books focus on that connection, friendship, attachments that are within, but also without family, how sometimes God manages to give us families that are not related to us by blood, and the importance of creating those deep and healthy attachments in life.
Yes, you are speaking to my soul right now. I know I had mentioned to you that we are a military family, and so we are constantly recreating our community in a new place every 2 to 3 years. And we don't have family local to us. We've never lived local to our family. So creating that in the constant moving it's something that is near and dear to my heart. And it's part of the reason why I started this platform is I feel like books are a way that we can bring us together. And I've used books throughout our moving, and I've made book clubs or I've joined book clubs just to create or start getting myself into a community when we move.
I love that. I totally agree. I think if you are a bookish kind of person, which I have been since childhood, books have been the magic that have been my comfort place, my quiet place, my adventure place. And when others feel the same way, and you sit down and you say, have you read such and thus? And they're like, oh my gosh. And all of a sudden, you've never met, but there is this deep connection because you have loved the same things and had the same experiences over this magical place that never existed except in someone's mind.
Yeah, I have, I think it was episode 63, somewhere in there. Her name was Meg Sight. She came on, and I've never forgot this quote. And she said, books are the best conversational currency. And I was like, that is so true. Because it can be, like you said, this gateway to just one step closer to becoming friends, where, that small talk can be very awkward in the beginning.
Okay, okay.
Yes. So I also have questions about being an enthusiastic cook of biblical recipes. How have you done your research to cook these recipes? I'm so intrigued.
Well, I think it just started when I was writing. I think when I started writing New Testament fiction. So I write fiction that's set in biblical times, both Old Testament and New Testament. And for those listeners who don't know what the heck that even could look like, is so if you've ever seen that old movie Ben-Hur,
Yeah.
that is sort of the kinds of things that I write. And when I was writing these New Testament novels, so during the time of when we say New Testament, like when Jesus was alive or right after he died and the church was being born and being created. And so these books take place in Roman times. So we actually have surviving recipes from Rome. And I thought, gosh, what did they eat? Because as you're writing, you want to obviously write something that is as historically accurate as you possibly can make it. And so I was researching some of these recipes and I thought, oh, wouldn't it be fun to make this? And bless him, my husband became my guinea pig. And a lot of times, like in Rome, in the big cities, they lived in apartments, like 5, 6 floors tall. So they couldn't have proper gardens, but they did grow things in pots. And at that time, we lived in a place that's the only way we could grow. So I thought, well, what if I started growing like a biblical garden with things in pots? Like what were the kinds of herbs that they would grow? And so I started experimenting with these foods. From Old Testament times, we don't really have that many surviving recipes. We have some from Babylon that are like 4,000 years old almost. But for the most part, what we have is a list of ingredients. Mm-hmm. So from the Persians, we have lists of ingredients. From the Bible, we have lists of ingredients. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take the list of ingredients and I'm going to create things. And one of the lessons that I learned, because first of all, it made the books more real because I was experimenting, but I also wanted to make them easy for my readers and book clubs because, you're not going to go outside and start a fire. You're not going to. How can I make it both genuine enough to give you a taste, but also easy enough so when you come home from work or when your kids are like pulling on you, you still have time to try them. And so that's the way these recipes started developing. I've had so much fun with them, and I hear from book clubs all the time that here's a picture, we tried this one, and so it's good.
Yeah, I can imagine that it also adds a depth to your stories when you're writing them, because now you've kind of experienced, okay, like growing these things in a pot, and if you're anything like, and even you have mediocre gardener, I'm like, I don't always, my things in pots don't always live. So, like, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Or you're struggling with weeds, or you're struggling with the bugs. But I think the one thing that I learned that was really eye-opening for me. So I wrote a book on Ruth, and we went to a barley field, and we actually picked barley, and we did roasted barley and all of that. And one of the things that was very eye-opening to me was how simple life was. They didn't have all of this fast foods. They didn't have time to create all of these various recipes. Their lives were simple. Their diet was simple. And yet it was very time consuming. Creating bread every day in the house was a time consuming process. And it took more than one woman usually to do that. So a kind of appreciation for that simplicity.
Yeah. I think that there is something to be said for like taking a step back and living that slow life. We lived in Sicily. Well, we went when my oldest was, he was 2.5. And then we had our other two children in Sicily. And so life became very slow anyways, which I mean, slow meaning like you're kind of stuck to your house, because we all know newborn life is not slow in the house. But we had the opportunity to go because we're living in Sicily and we're like, when are we going to be this close to Israel? So we went to Jerusalem and we went to Nazareth. I'm bringing this up because we went to Nazareth. Our friends had gone the year before and they had recommended, they're like, go to Nazareth. There's like a biblical reenactment. And you go and you walk around and then you have like a docent that takes you around. And so they're tying in all these pieces of the Bible to what you're actually seeing. But then you have this meal and you're right. It can't be a one person job. There is so much going on. They're baking the breads in these large ovens and, they made soups and we had just a few courses, but the food was delicious. And I remember my son, they had lentil soup, inhaled this lentil soup. In fact, I think he had 3 bowls and he was maybe 3.5 or 4 at the time. And I was like, well, I had never made him lentils, but I was like, I guess lentil soup needs to be on the menu. And like to this day, I make him lentil soup, and it's such a simple recipe. It was like carrot, celery, I think thyme, if I remember correctly, lentils and water. And that was it. And it's like the most simple thing, but he loves it.
Yeah, it's so true. I think my husband and I are now at that age where we're like, we got to slow down. This running around thing, it's not really healthy. And so we made that decision, and then we decided to sell our house and buy a house. So that didn't quite work out, especially because like my husband is one of those old-fashioned guys. He'll open the door for you, and he knows how to do things himself. So when we moved, we did most of it ourselves. We had a few bigger pieces that we needed help with, but most of the things he and I did ourselves. So life was craziness for a while, for some months, but we've still sort of decided, okay, what can we do so that we're not always in this experience of overwhelm? That overwhelm is not good for your physical body, and as you get older, you really start like being concerned about things like that. And so even though it hasn't been as quieted as we would have liked, but I still created spaces. Like twice a week, I pray with a friend, and it's like we go deep. We pray about 45 minutes, and then we also share for another maybe 30 minutes or so, sometimes longer. So we take the time, and it's not in person because she's too far away for the drive, but we take the time, and she's got little kids, and sometimes the little kids come in the middle of the prayer, but we go deep and we just say, this is not something we're going to compromise on. We're going to just put it in. Doesn't matter what else is going on. And so there are these kinds of things that we've said, how can we put into our lives these things that are meaningful, these things that quiet us and calm us down, and help us just change the pace of life a little bit toward sane rather than insane.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, is that it is very intentional. You have to be very intentional to create these spaces in your life. And it might require you saying no. It might require you not being to everything in the neighborhood or in the community. I feel like that's one of the things I have been, I don't know, like naively thought about adulthood, is how much time I spend in creating these pockets of time, whether it's for my kids or for myself, to make sure we're slowing down to truly do what I believe are things that matter, right? Being together or having quiet time in the moment or in the morning when I read my Bible, and I take an hour to myself before my kids get up. But it's intentional, and sometimes maybe a radical decision on your part to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you were sharing with me when we started that you start every morning at 5:15 or whenever it is, that you start that if you want to have that extra hour, you need to like wake up at that very, very early hour. To me, it's like super. Where are the places where you can carve out those quiet times? I think some people do better with a frenetic pace. I know I don't, and there are a lot of people who don't, but are caught in a frenetic pace. It's the season of life, or as you said, sometimes you just have to make sacrifices and say, these are things I would love to do, but really I can't do if I want a quieter. So what do I sacrifice? You just have to figure out what works for you, for your body, for your mind, for your family.
Yeah. Yeah. And one last point. I'm a physical therapist by trade. That was my job before we started all this moving around. And I would always tell my patients, like, you got to listen to your body. And I think that unfortunately, when you're running at a frenetic pace, it is very hard to listen to your body and really take in, like, what is it telling you? Like, is this too much? But doing maybe that inventory of yourself, right? Whether that's spiritually, mentally, physically, and are the things I'm doing in my life really serving me, and reevaluating. And I would recommend that doing that like once a quarter, stepping back and being like, is what I'm doing right now serving me and the purpose and my goals for what I want for the long term, and really taking stock of that.
I think that is so insightful because, for example, I'm a writer, I'm a full-time writer. So writing is a very like sit down and don't move at all job. And it hasn't served my body very well. So I've learned I cannot do that. I really cannot afford to just sit and do my job sitting down. And I have to come up with ways that are sometimes very creative and sometimes sacrificial on how to get the movement into my body, into my life, because it's no fun having painful knees,
Yeah. Yeah, we just got it. We were talking before that we had redone our office. We just got a stand-up desk, like it can go to sit and stand. And I'm like, this is the best thing ever. Now, my next thing, I want to get a little walking pad under here, but I don't have it yet.
That's awesome.
So, well, we haven't even talked about your latest novel, The Royal Artisan, yet. So, for listeners that maybe haven't gotten a chance to pick it up yet, can you tell them about the book?
So, The Royal Artisan is the second book in a series set in the times of Queen Esther. I was at the hairdresser the other day and I asked this young lady, do you know who Esther was? And she was like, no, she'd never heard of Queen Esther. So, in case you are among those, Queen Esther was a queen in the Persian period. So it would be like about 400 years before Christ. So 2,500 years ago or so. And the reason she's very famous is because Queen Esther was actually Jewish, but she kept that a secret because Persian kings never married foreigners, and they did, or if they did not become the queen. They did not have that central sort of position. But Queen Esther had not shared that with her husband, and there was some very exciting things that happened during her lifetime. There was a man who was sort of evil, and he hated all the Jewish people, and he came up with this plot to kill all the Jewish people in the kingdom of Persia, which was 127 provinces. It stretched from all the way from India to Egypt. So it was like the biggest empire the world had ever seen up to that time. And Esther is now, as a woman, in a position to try and figure a way to save her people. So that's her story. But I'm writing 3 books that are about the friends of Queen Esther, because that story has been told so often. So This is the second book. The first book was about Queen Esther's cook. This second book is about a potter who works in a pottery shop that belongs to Esther's enemy, Haman. And he's very against the Jews. So she, like Esther, has never let on that she's Jewish. She's living under an assumed identity. And when he discovers that she also is Jewish, he obviously is out to destroy her. So the story is about how a woman who is very gifted in this area suddenly finds herself in this position to help her people. An ordinary person who's got a job, she's a potter, that's what she does. And all of a sudden she's drawn into this very different era. And the fun part, because I always have two things. I always have a little bit of romance and I always have a happy ending. So the fun part is that this is a second chance at love. 5 years earlier, she's been betrothed to a guy. And it turns out that the agent of the queen who comes into the pottery shop to help her is that guy who broke the betrothal off 5 years. And now, obviously, she's not very happy with him for doing that. So when they get together, there a lot of sparks fly, and there's some funny moments. And then, obviously, you have to figure out like why did this betrothal break off, and is there a chance that it could ever this ever have happened?
Yeah, where we're like rooting for the characters.
Right.
What I love, and I meant to mention this when I said we had gone to Nazareth, but I love that your books and books in this genre bring the Bible to life for me, right? Like I think sometimes we read the Bible, and I know you've studied that, but sometimes you read it and it's not very accessible, right? Like you can't put yourself in the time, you can't put yourself in the place. I don't know enough of history to kind of put it onto the spectrum of where I'm looking. But I read novels like yours, and it opens up this whole part of the Bible. And the only thing, admittedly, I had known about Queen Esther was her quote of like, maybe you were born for such a time as this. It's the one thing I knew about her. I didn't even know that she was Jewish and it's just, so it opens up this whole part of the Bible, and it makes you think, and it lets you live in it, and it lets you kind of interact with the story. And I love to read, and I always think, would I be able to do the same thing if I was that character with this set of circumstances? I love kind of challenging myself like that. So it challenges my faith. It challenges me as a person to think, would I be willing to put my neck out there for the Jewish people, right? And how scared she might have been. And so I love your novels for that reason.
Thank you so much, Cara. That means a lot. I do hear from readers quite often who say that they find, and they don't like to say this because they may get judged in the church or whatever, but that they find the Bible really hard to connect to, and that they don't understand it, or that it just doesn't feel relevant to them. And they say, they'll read one of my books and they'll be like, what? That's in the Bible? Like, did that really happen? And that makes them go read the Bible. But because they've read the book and they've seen the context, the Bible comes to life for them in a fresh way. And that's an incredible honor.
Yeah. I also think that I have attended a women's Bible study for many years, and we often talk about, sometimes it seems like these saints or these great figures of the Bible have done incredible things, and we're just an average woman here on earth. But again, you then read these stories and you see, like you mentioned with your second novel, of this series, that an average person was this, but she had this great skill in it. So it makes it be like, oh, well, maybe I could be that level one day too.
I agree. And I think that's part of my hope is one, that you're encouraged, because often my characters come, they're broken, they're wounded, they come from a difficult background. There's something in there that's a big challenge for them. They've had some kind of heartbreak. The books have a lot of humor, so I'm not trying to say that they're very dramatic or hard to read, but it's the overcoming of these things. It's the fact that my potter is her real name is Shoshana, but she goes by Sazana. She is afraid in some ways to stand up. She doesn't speak very well. She can't express her words very well. And I think there are lots of people out there that can really relate to that. So she's quiet, and other people feel like have told her when she's been growing up, have told her like she's boring, because by the time she thinks of the right thing to say, everybody else has moved on. And so it's very hard for her to stand up to people and to speak and to say what she feels. Yeah. And she has to learn to be at peace with the way she's been created. And I think this is so important, because we spend so much of our time wishing I wish I looked like so and so. I wished I had the talent of so and so. I wish I was, we compare ourselves and come up short. And she has to learn that the way she's been created is precious, is important. That if you took that part of her away, then who knows, but the other parts will all fall apart, and she will no longer be her. And that she has to learn to respect how God has made her and to live the best of herself in the way she's been made. I just love the idea of us appreciating each other for how we are and who we are.
Yeah, I think that is so true. And I think God has a plan for all of our lives, right? And so he made us. There was no mistake in how he made us, but it's learning to embrace who we are and what we do with that gift.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And recognizing that you can find, even though there are certain parts of you that have gotten broken, or you have a broken heart, or there's been a big rejection in your life, or just recognizing that you can move on from that, and that God can use you, that your life can count for something very important in ways that you hadn't really expected it to, even though you are a very average, normal person. And I think that's why, even though we hear from Esther in these novels, the main characters are her friends. Yeah. So they're just like regular people with a gifting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would highly encourage you listeners to go pick up any of Tessa's books, actually, but her latest one, The Royal Artisan. You might have already answered this, but what is your hope for the readers? What do you wish they'll take away when they read this novel?
For this particular novel, I think there are a couple of things. So the issue is, if you have a particular gifting in your life, is that who you are? Is everything in you dependent on doing your job well? Whether you're a mom, whether you are a teacher, whether you are a doctor, whatever. Is your whole identity wrapped in what you do? What happens when that's taken away? Who are you really? And so I hope that by the end of this novel, the readers have that sense that I am more than what I do. Yeah. And even if you were to take that away from me, that who I am is so much more, and I can rest in that, so that we don't run around feeling overwhelmed by, oh, work isn't going well, or what if I fail, or what if I don't meet every expectation.
Yeah.
So so that's definitely one aspect of it that I hope readers will take away. There are a few threads in there, but that's one.
Yeah. I think that is such an important lesson, because I know I went through a similar, like this shock of when I left my job as a physical therapist. It was like, well, who do I say that I am now? And I really struggled with that for at least a year of like, well, I'm just a stay-at-home mom, right? But just a stay-at-home mom encompasses so much. But I guess I totally hear what you're saying there.
Yeah, I wish there are certain places where I wish we would take the word just and and really throw it underfoot and squash it out, because a stay-at-home mom, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not a mom, but as far as I'm concerned, a stay-at-home mom, or any kind of mom, that's the most important job in the world.
Yeah. I always joke around, but I'm like, I am busier than I ever was when I worked a full-time job. So it encompasses so much more. Well, was there a book that you read, maybe as a child, that made you want to become a writer?
No, there were no specific books that made me become a writer. I think I just loved writing. When as you mentioned, I grew up in the Middle East. And so part of the education system was that you wrote a lot of essays and stories almost on a weekly basis. So because literature is really important there. It's kind of this duo dynamic thing where on the one hand, literature is very important. On the other hand, you are never good enough to write literature to write, because like a writer is Tolstoy. If you're not Tolstoy, you can't be a writer. So forget it. But I love that. Like that was the thing that I did the best at school, and I was the top of the class. So I always felt like the most fun I had was just making up stories.
Yeah.
And if there wasn't a story that I was writing, I was making one up in my head. I just lived in my own world. And I didn't realize that you could like actually grow up and do this as a living because I was told actually you can't. And so I was a late developer as far as being a writer, but always, always in my heart, that was the thing I loved best.
Yeah. Well, that makes me think of back to your conversation about the gifts, right? That was like, that's a gift that God gave you, and He kept bringing it back and pushing it forward at the right time.
Yeah, he really did. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about who you are as a reader. What genres do you enjoy reading?
Well, I'm so glad you put it in that context because I read a lot of different genres. I mean, I don't read horror, and there are certain things I don't read, but most genres really draw me. And I would say I love historical fiction because I love being in a completely different world. But at the same time, I also love fantasy, sci-fi. I love a little bit of mystery, thrillers. It's just and sometimes I read like contemporary. The thing I love most is a happy ending if I can get it. There are certain books where there is no happy ending, and I still love it. And just because the book was written so well, maybe. So like Gone with the Wind,
Yeah.
there's a question as to the ending being happy or not unhappy. It depends on where you take that last sentence. But I still love that book.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I love happy endings just because life is so full of heaviness already. And so I like to know that even hardship can work out.
Yeah. Yeah. Reading is an escape for most of us, I would think. So we can pick and choose where we want to take that. Well, in your busyness, how do you find time to read?
I love reading, so I make a way. If I'm brushing my teeth, I have my book open in front of
Oh,
me. All
good.
my books are like saved by water or whatever. And if I'm cooking, when we are in bed, we usually read for about half an hour before we fall asleep. And so I carry my book with me for every 10-minute break that I have, just so that I can read a little bit.
Yeah, that's my like number one recommendation is always have a book on hand because you can sneak in 5 or 10 minutes here and there, and you would be surprised how much you can knock out when you're doing that.
That's very true. I do a little bit of audiobooks and not as much as I used to. There just isn't time to do it. We have an open plan. So when I'm listening to an audiobook, perforce that means my husband is also listening to it. So it's a little harder to arrange it, but I love those too.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we just did a road trip recently and I was like, "What? Could I like convince my husband to read an audiobook?" And I'm like, "What would be a good middle of the road?" Because we do read very differently, what he would pick up. So, but I got a book. We ended up not even turning it on. We got The Wild Robot for our kids. And so we ended up listening. Everybody loved The Wild Robot. So we listened to The Wild Robot for the road trip.
That's great. Yeah.
Yes, well, you have been so gracious to bring a book flight with you today. Can you tell us how you chose these books?
So I chose three. One is Jane Eyre because that is truly my favorite book. And I have a very hard time picking favorites. But Jane Eyre has everything for me in the sense that it has witty conversation, it has romance, it has faith. Most people watch the movie and they always leave the faith aspect out of the movie. It has a great dialogue, great characters, and I love Jane herself. So it seems to have everything in one book. And that's what, since it's my all-time favorite, it's a classic, I picked that. And then the
Yeah.
other two I just picked because they are books that I read this year and I really enjoyed. And that's where I have a really hard time picking favorites. So it's not like my all-time favorite. These are just
Sure.
this year's favorites. And one book is called Amber Gold. I haven't finished reading it yet. It's a YA fantasy. It's got dragons. It's got like Roman type soldiers and a whole different world. And the writing is just so good that I love the writing. It's very sparse, and then the character of the dragon I am very drawn to. He's if you choose to read it, you'll see. He's kind of
Yeah. I haven't heard of this one, so I'm excited to pick it up. So it was Amber Gold, and that's by Rochelle Nelson.
That's correct.
Yep.
Yes, yes. Again, I just hope it has a happy ending, but I haven't read the end yet. I've read most of it. The other book is called Dear Mr. Knightley, and that's a contemporary fiction, a romance, but it pulls in all these classics. It pulls in, obviously, from the name, you can tell Mr. Knightley. So it has like some of Jane Austen's novels and references. And then it also has a reference to a book called Daddy Longlegs, because there's all these exchange of letters between the two characters. But the way she uses literature in this sweet little romance, and the character, I just love the character. I kind of fell in love with her. So it was, I loved being in her world. I felt at the end like I had a friend, like, let's go grab coffee. Oh no, you're not real. Darn.
I feel like that's what the contemporary novels do so well, right? Is it really puts you in and you're like, I loved being, like you said, like this felt like a friend, a little voice in my head for, however long I spent with the book. But I saw this book recently because the cover is beautiful too. Like the color of it really drew me in. So yeah, so that was Dear Mr. Knightley by Catherine Rie. So thank you so much for bringing those books with you today. How I love to end our show is with our bonus pairings, and they are a speed round of questions you can answer really quick. Are you a rereader?
Definitely, for certain books.
Okay. What is one book you've read that has changed your life?
The Bible.
Okay. Where is your favorite place to read?
Anywhere. I really
love
don't.
it. I love it. Lastly, what are you reading next?
I am not sure. Oh, yes, I think for book club, I have to read this. This is Friedrich Bachman, My Friends. I had to
yes.
move the thing to see.
Yes, and that's his new one, right? I think that's the new one
I think
that came
so.
out.
We're doing it for book club, so I have no idea how it's going to be. I haven't picked it up yet.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show with me today. I know your time is precious, and I appreciate all you've given me.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Take care, Cara.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this episode today with Tessa Afshar. All the books that we talked about today can be found at bookishflights.com. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. Your review not only helps the show, but it also helps the podcast to reach others. Make sure you are subscribed on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to make sure you will not miss an episode. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. As Emma Thompson said, I think books are like people in the sense that they'll turn up in your life when you most need them. Cheers to you, dear readers. Until next time.